Good afternoon, class. Again, it's Brian Allenspach, and it is my pleasure to present my final communication in leadership paper. We will be looking at communication strategies and leadership approach in comparing two leaders. And to get started, I wanted to leave you with a thought. Is it better to be loved or hated? By Machiavelli. This is the approach that our coaches, that I will cover, took and have led their lives both on and off the basketball court. We'll look at two Division I basketball coaches that are arguably the best Division I men's basketball coaches of all time. It's interesting, as we talk about Coach Krzyzewski, also known as Coach K, and Coach Knight, also known as the General, they had two very different leadership styles, but have accomplished amazing things on and off the court. Coach K being less controversial than Coach Knight, and we'll explore those a little bit more as we get into the paper. Today, what I'd like to talk about is a quick understanding of communication and leadership strategies that both Coach K and Coach Knight live their lives by, both on and off the court. Then we'll do a brief introduction of Coach K, who he is, and his accomplishments. We'll do the same for both Coach Knight, also known as the General. Then we'll look at Coach K's leadership approach and communication strategy, and how he applied that on the court with some audio from him in interviews. We'll do the same for Coach Knight and look at his leadership and communication strategy, but the paradox of his approach to Coach K. Then we'll talk about the quest for excellence and the similarities between the two coaches. And then I'd like to give a quick personal perspective on my coaching style, as I'm a youth basketball coach and have been for the last 20 years. And then I'll give you a conclusion in closing. As we look at Coach Knight and Coach K, the interesting part is their leadership paradox. And there was a cross of paths early on in Coach K and Coach Knight's career. Then, as we look at their approach and going into Coach K and Coach Knight's leadership and communication strategies, interestingly, they could not be any more different in their approach. From a very early on period of time, you can see in this picture that Coach Knight coached Coach K at West Point, also known as Army. And that's where the similarities stopped. What I'll do quickly is show you a comparison in this slide of the winningest coaches in college basketball and the approach that they've taken both on and off the court. As you can see, very clearly, both Coach K and Coach Knight are tremendously successful. I'd like to note that Coach K is actively still coaching and Coach Knight has since retired. You can see that Coach K, by the numbers in this slide, that in 36 seasons at Duke, Coach K is a Hall of Fame coach both in the Naismith College Basketball Hall of Fame and the Basketball Hall of Fame, which includes all professional sports as well. And some highlights of Coach K is he has 5 national championships as a Division I basketball coach. He has 6 gold medals as the head coach of the U.S. men's basketball team that competed internationally and in the Olympics. He has 1,043 current career wins, which is the most all-time by any Division I men's basketball coach, and actually surpassed Coach Knight's record of 903 victories about 4 years ago. Interestingly, he has 445 ACC wins and 90 NCAA tournament wins. He's got 12 National Coach of the Year honors in 8 different seasons, so he's won them in multiple different platforms. And 6 National Defensive Players of the Year. So one of the things that we'll talk about with Coach K is his approach, but his inclusive team approach. Now, Coach Knight by the numbers. He was a 3-time national champion at Indiana. Coach Knight has coached at 3 different schools, unlike Coach K, whose entire career has been at Duke University, or notable career has been at Duke University. But he's an 11-time Big Ten champion, and he was the Naismith College Coach of the Year once, and also got Coach of the Year by Claire B. And he's the 8-time Big Ten Coach of the Year. And he, as well as Coach K, has been inducted into both the Basketball Hall of Fame and the College Basketball Hall of Fame. Now what we're going to start to explore is Coach K's leadership style and communication approach. As I highlighted in my paper, with Coach K and Coach Knight, I'll take a perspective of both from Coach K as a coach to his student athletes, Coach K as a colleague to the other coaches on his staff, and then Coach K and the approach that he gives to the media and how he likes to speak outside of basketball and has become a thought leader in both leadership and communication around the world. Interestingly, Coach K takes a very different approach than Coach Knight. Coach K notably is known for his approach more of a transformative leader. He empowers his staff, or I should say his players, his staff, and interestingly the media to guide their own perspective and approach every year as he goes into a different team. You know, interesting in college basketball, in this day and age, it's very hard to keep players around for a long period of time. So sometimes you're bringing in new players every single year. Coach K takes the approach with his players first of letting them decide what they're going to do each year, understanding their strengths and weaknesses and playing off of them, helping them guide that. Coach K also, with his staff, allows them to act in a head coaching role. Most recently, he had a back surgery, and his staff moved into that interim head coach and continued to implement the strategies that he has. One thing I want to share with you is in this team clip, and not only from the team, but also the coaching perspective, listen to what Coach K thinks about teams.
On my team at Duke, I know the lady who cleans my office. It's Lena. I know her children. I should know them. I know DC who cleans our locker room. I should know Lena because she's probably the best person in someone else's life, just like my mom was. And so, but also, it's our team.
Now, what I'd like to do is talk about outside of the team, as you just heard in Coach K's audio clip, that it is about knowing all of the details, and his team is not just the players. It's not just the coaches. It's everybody around him that's included in the Duke program. Now, interestingly, I want to also display to you that Coach K takes a trust. Trust is everything approach with his players. If the foundation of communication and leadership is having a more of a transformative trust approach with your staff, your players, and the media. Listen here on his approach to trust.
Teams that trust one another and communicate are luckier. You know, like, you know, in our thing, you know, because we've won a lot, people say, you get the calls, all right, somebody's got to get them, you know what I mean? Or, you know what I mean?
Now what I'd like to do is finish with Coach K and his approach on one last audio clip from Coach K. What I want to do by bringing these audio clips is really give you a perspective in what their approach was. But he talks about believing in his team, and like I said before, that transformative approach, but also leading by example and allowing the team, the players, and the staff to step into different roles that suit the different needs of each individual team. Listen.
It's an amazing thing if you can look in someone's eyes and tell them you believe them. It's one of the things that we do not do enough. I get kids coming to my summer camp, and parents go to these Little League games, and they're watching kids and all that. You got to tell them, I believe in you. I believe in you. You know, I believe in you.
What we'll now do in closing is Coach K's approach was very transformative. He had an open line of communication. And as you could see in the paper, one of the things that I highlighted was that he definitely took an approach of believing and trusting his team, his staff, and modifying the needs of each and giving them a leadership role every single year based on the different needs and deficits that they needed. Now we'll talk about Coach Knight. Coach Knight, interestingly, took a very different approach than Coach K. And what you'll see in Coach Knight's approach is that it was a very authoritative and disciplinary approach. What you can see in some of the pictures, and one that I'll highlight here, is the paradoxical approach to both Coach K and Coach Knight couldn't be any more evident in this picture of him yelling at other players. But also his approach on the court was to refine to absolute excellence. I'm going to play this quote now, And it's him when he retired from Indiana talking about his critics.
When my time on earth is gone and my activities here are past, I want they bury me upside down and my critics can kiss my...
So as displayed in the audio clip of Coach Knight, that he didn't care what the perception was of his team, what the perception, more importantly, of him was, and what the perception of what he did was. One thing with Coach Knight is he always prepared not to lose. That was a very different and interesting approach. Coach Knight is known for one incident, and that was throwing a chair during a game in the 1983 season. He got suspended as a coach, but his players had this undue loyalty to him, and it was interesting that this paradoxical leadership that he presented was interestingly very different than Coach K. Now, in closing, what I wanted to talk about is my personal coaching style. As you can see, and I wore this shirt, the Storm, I started a travel basketball league, and through coaching youth, I definitely take more of a Coach K approach and that transformative and giving them the autonomy and understanding that the decisions and things that they do as a team, and it's better to act as a team than an individual, will hopefully lead them to success. So in closing, as you can see, Coach K and Coach Knight had a very different leadership style. Arguably, Coach Knight took it too far, according to the media. But as Machiavelli said, is it better to be hated or feared? Definitely Coach K loved the love side, and then Coach Knight was more of the hated side. But regardless of that, interestingly, human behavior would show that both were successful. Thank you for your time and attention.